And welcome to episode 52 of the Brewed Sages. Stormbound players with a head for the game. I am Freeloader, and with me as always are Subaiku and Thomas. Subaiku, how's it going tonight?
Fantastic.
And Thomas, how are you doing?
Pretty all right.
Well, like you, we are the Brewed Sages, easily the second best Stormbound related podcast in production. And as a reminder, you can always follow us at Brewed Sages on Twitter. Or for all of you who still think Wayne's World was recorded a mere 10 years ago, our email address is thebrewedsages@gmail.com. So, fellas, we've got some community news. Let's jump right in. The SWCC just finished week 3, if that's correct. Subaiku, who won this week?
The winner of week 3 was Nadernad, taking home that cool 175 ruby prize.
Wait. So he didn't just win the judges' side; he also won the social side. Everybody voted for him.
Correct.
Wow, this must be one hell of a card.
It's a pretty neat card. It is called Officer's Tent. It's a neutral structure, legendary, 4 mana, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 strength.
Okay, underpowered.
At the start of your turn, flip the top card of your deck. While the structure is alive, you may cycle twice per turn, deal 1 damage to itself for the first cycle, and 2 damage for the second. So it kind of lets you move through your deck really fast at the cost of the strength of the structure, so it's got a little clock on it.
Okay. So this goes all the way back to Magic the Gathering. Do you remember Sylvan Library?
Absolutely.
Sylvan Library was like one of my favorite green cards way back in the day. This is going back. Gosh, I don't even want to talk about how long ago it was. But let's say I had a 4th edition Sylvan Library, and maybe a 3rd. This is kind of like that, where you can kind of find the card you're looking for more easily at the start of every turn. Now, I assume, although we don't have notes here to tell us, can both sides see the top card of your deck?
I assume that it shows it in your UI on the top of the deck where that little cycle, where you cycle cards to.
Yeah.
It's just you that sees it.
Are you sure? Because, boy, it
No,
would
I
be
don't know.
very interesting if both sides could see the top deck of the top card of your deck. Man, that would change all kinds of calculus involved with, like, can I afford to let a runner in this turn? Oh, nope, there's Hearth cards on the top of the deck. I guess I'm not doing it.
Well, I mean, cards are played as red, and it's just at the start of your turn, flip to the top card of your deck. So that means that's what you do at the start of your turn. Your opponent gets to see what's on the top of your deck on starting your turn. So they can't foreplan, really, unless they do see the previous turn that you had drawn into Hearth cards. But
Good point.
yeah. But either way, this would be a super sweet card. I can understand why it won.
Yeah, no,
Just
this
so
would be
unique.
awesome.
4 mana is a lot, but the effect is really interesting and definitely would be worth it, I think.
Only 8 strength for 4 mana at level 5. That's an underpowered 4-drop tower, right? Like, I'm thinking Fort of Emberock is 3 mana for 8, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Still,
I think of this card as like a Rogue Sheep.
Okay.
Turn you play it, you don't get anything, but then you start getting that the benefits on the following turns.
That's a good point. You actually can't pair this with freebooters, can you? Because it's at the start of your turn. You get to flip the top card of your deck.
Mm-hmm.
This with freebooters would be really cool, though. I'm just saying.
Just with MERS, you play MERS on 3, you drop this afterward, you just boom, start moving through your deck to get to that token faster.
Oh, that's pretty sweet. All right, well, let's move on from there, because there is other community news. Little tip of the hat to Nadernad. That is a really cool card, and congrats on the 175 rubies. But we have more. Thomas, what else is going on this week?
As usual, we've got Toad Games. They just finished week 15. Looks like Kirby Boy got first place with 9 games net won for a grand total of 2,900 coins.
Holy
So
smokes.
yeah, there's a little bit of an incentive to play Toad Games. And looks like Toad Games are back on for Monday through Wednesday.
So the same time as draft. Okay. So Monday through Wednesday, everyone should play so that they can give Kirby some of their gold.
It looks like things are going really well for it, though. There was a grand total of 59 games played, so it's really ramping up finally.
Huh. All right. Well, I guess I'm gonna have to get on that. Sabaiku, were you playing this week?
I was not. I was on vacation this week.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you didn't do anything this week. All right. Well, then I will jump on the last one, which is, of course, our dear friend MKM is running again the Race to Heroes League. So it starts in, oh gosh, probably give or take less than a day from when you're hearing this. If you're hearing this when we first publish, perhaps it's already begun, in fact. So for all of you who don't remember, you've got a limited time to get to Heroes League. But if you do get to it in the first, is it week or 5 days?
First week.
First week, contact MCAM, give him proof of it, and you are entered into a drawing for all kinds of cool rewards. Or if you're like me, you're entered into the drawing so that you can then watch Stony J win instead of you. Which, at this point, considering how great Stony J is at everything he does, I guess it's not a big surprise he beat me again. But it is very cool and it's worth doing. So good luck to everyone. Get on that. The game does not end on the 28th, my friends. The game begins again on the 1st. Well, with that, let's jump into our main topic tonight. We have, of course, patch notes. Honestly, it's the only reason why I stay up late some nights is looking for the patch notes so that maybe we can do another episode of Brewed Sages. And this week, or this month, pardon me, we have a doozy of balance changes. Sabaiku, do you want to give us our first one?
Yeah, first one, the Melodious Sisters. The ability
Ooh.
will now deal 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 damage, up +1 at every level, to the units surrounding the target instead of bordering it. And I don't think the increase in ability really matters that much. I think 4 to 8 or 5 to 9 is kind of about the same. But bordering instead of surrounding, I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Melodious Sisters all of a sudden is real playable.
Yeah, Thomas, I'm really liking this one, and I agree with Sabaiku. What do you think? The surrounding from bordering is the big change.
Absolutely, 100%. 6 mana though for that combo. That's a pretty hefty price to pay.
It is.
It
It
is,
is.
but and now the reason why in the past we've always said that we don't like Melodious Sisters that much, like that drawback still exists in that they have to attack into whatever the target unit is. So if there's only one unit surrounding it, it does its damage to that unit, but then you lose your Melodious Sisters in the attack anyway. So it's okay. It's not great,
Uh,
but go ahead.
I was just going to say, it occurs to me that we have not reminded a lot of our listeners what Melodious Sisters does.
Wait, doesn't everybody know?
So doesn't everybody know? Right. So for those of you who don't know, 4 mana neutral epic, 8/1. So the stats on it, 4 mana, 8/1 for level 5. That's standard, right? Like that's your stoic, that's your siege breakers. So it does the standard progression from level 1 through 5, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then its special effect is before attacking a confused unit, you can deal up to, and currently it's 8, but it will be 9, of its strength as damage to all enemies surrounding it, not Melodious Sisters, but the confused unit.
And to be clear, the base is an enemy surrounding it sometimes.
This is true. So to Thomas's point about it being a 6 mana combo, the hot combo with this is of course Sweet Cap. So it's kind of like Sweet Cap with HRC, Hair Raising Cats, but Melodious Sisters, instead of basically turning Sweet Cap into a Hysteria style play, Melodious Sisters turns it into like a Toxac, where it just blows up everything around it.
I think it's the right way to describe it. Yeah. Like Dark Harvest on a stick. So
Dark Harvest on a stick.
you do damage to the target unit, but first, the target unit just gets rid of everything in the area, hopefully. At least that's the way it should work.
Yeah. So what I still don't like, so I mean, obviously there's a lot of conditions around this. One of the
Mm-hmm.
ones that I keep getting stuck on, like even in the feline brawl, is the entire midsection of the card that says deal up to 5 of its strength as damage, blah blah blah. So like that midsection, if you're just trying to take out a 5 strength thing and you now have like the Melodious Sisters at level 5 where you want to do 9 damage to everything surrounding, well, the thing that you're attacking into, only having 5 strength, is only going to do 5 damage to the things around it.
That's fair, but as we've seen with like Toxac and Hunter's Vengeance, 5 or 6 damage is pretty palpable. Like it does a lot of work on a lot of boards. The problem is just we don't get to control where this Toxac happens. Your opponent gets to choose the placement of their units, and then we can only use one of their units, right? We don't get to put an additional unit down. Well, actually, so hear me out. 8 mana with hags.
Right.
But no, it's going to do 1 damage then.
Yep.
Oh crap, never mind.
See?
Right. So, and this is the problem defensively, right? Is if you are forced into playing at your own baseline, this is inconsequential, right? You have
Yeah.
to put Sweet Cap in front of the unit that you want to attack, and now you no longer have a clear path to attack it unless you're on like 8 mana and you have something like Dubious Hags or whatnot to move your front up and then confuse and do your Melodious Bomb. It's a really good combo in the middle of the board, in the middle of the game, where you're able to kind of stall your opponent and reset their front. I don't know. I guess maybe even more offensively, if you can confuse something on your opponent's baseline, you can attack into it, you get some base damage out of it, maybe you clear a path for some other units.
Yeah, I mean, so when I think of units on my opponent's baseline, I want Dawn Sparks, right? Like that's the one that drives me nuts. My opponent always plays it on their baseline. It's the one I want to use. Well, this won't do that. I need hair raising cats, not Melodious Sisters.
Yeah, and the nice thing about hair raising cats instead is that hair raising cats removes the unit no matter how big it is because it just attacks into something else.
Right, exactly. I'm trying to imagine a situation where my opponent is not only playing units on their baseline, so they're playing defensive. I'm on the offensive, right? I'm on the attack. But then they have other units around it. Normally, like if I'm putting pressure on my opponent, they're trading into one of my units just, that's on like the second to the penultimate row. So that way they can start clearing units on the baseline. And what's left over in those situations is 1 or 2 health units max. Melodious Sisters, to Thomas's point, isn't really doing a lot of work in that kind of situation. Even though, yeah, sure, I can get like maybe a 2 damage AoE everywhere. Woohoo! It clears 1. It's not like my opponent has a ton of units in that situation. So I'm trying to imagine, like, is there ever a time where like this goes great against like a Rain of Frogs?
Goes great against Zuri.
It does go great against Zarya, that is for sure.
Oh, wait. Oh, fellas.
So no, there's nothing new groundbreaking here because it still worked against Zuri before this change. There's no
Oh,
change to
right,
this,
right, right.
and obviously we saw that it didn't have all the play in the world. So the kind of perfect storm, the reason why this isn't going to change that much is because of all the requirements for this to work out. You've got to run 2 subpar cards, being Melodious and Sweet Cap.
Mhm.
So that's number 1. Number 2, you got to have good board presence to set this combo up. Number
Right.
3, you got to have the 2 cards in hand. And number 3, your opponent has to have a decent board setup for you to get great value out of this.
Yeah, I think maybe we need additional confusion appliers.
Yes, low cost confusion appliers.
What if Sweet Cap had movement? Would we think of it as an undervalued card at that point?
It'd be extremely undervalued because then it'd be gifted recruits plus confusion.
Yeah,
Right.
I would play that.
That sounds
That's
like
what I'm saying.
fluffy
That's what I'm
bad
saying.
box sisters.
So right now everybody looks at it and they're like, well, it just doesn't have movement. It's like you're not getting great value for your 2 mana.
It would be
And
the exact same thing as fluffy bad boxers versus heroic soldiers.
well, that's
Right.
true. No, it wouldn't because well, we don't want to foreshadow, but as of right now, recording on the 27th, it would not be the same because Fluffy is stronger.
Yeah, so the
Foreshadowing.
difference is Sweet Cap is already just fine, but it's
Okay.
situationally useful. Whereas something like Gifted Recruits is always useful.
Well, Lawless Herd is always fine. It's 2 mana for 6 with no movement.
And
Sweet Cap is understated for its strength with no movement unless you really value the special effect. And to your point, the special effect is only occasionally useful.
Hmm.
So I'm wondering if you don't fix that by just giving it movement.
yeah, no, I don't
No.
like that at
Okay.
all.
Well, then don't do it. All right. Let's move on from there because we have more. We have another one. Thomas, would you like to take the second? Temple Guardians.
Oh boy. So, Temple Guardians now also triggers when being played on the side of a temple. I like this change a lot because, just for the heck of it, 1 month when getting temples, I decided to put a Temple Guardians deck together. Of course, I had Flood the Gates in the deck. um, but yeah, you play a Temple of Focus, and then you play Temple of Guardians later on, and you only get 2 spawns from the Temple Guardians, which just made zero sense to me. So now, if you have your Temple of Focus on your baseline, you at least also get a spawn up in front of the Temple of Focus. So you get the normal value out of the card, which is what it should have been in the first
Good.
place. Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that's cool now is if you actually have some board presence and you put like your temple somewhere on the board, you can start playing Temple Guardians around the thing as long as it's not behind and be able to get spawns on each side. If you've got
You see,
2 temples on the board, you're gonna get like 5 spawns. I think I counted it out.
yeah, yeah, you are. But hear me out. If you have a deck that is able to not die after you've played 2 temples, you're winning that game anyway.
No,
What a
because you
temple.
just play Temple of Life because no opponent is gonna get rid of it. They're not gonna waste their time.
Which is a good point there. See, the only temple I want with Temple Guardians is the Temple of Space because I think they should immediately become Temple Guardians of the Galaxy. And I want their intro audio to be Red Bones, come and get your love. Make it happen.
Oh,
Might be
jeez.
some licensing to work out there.
Yeah, small issue. I think
I,
Disney owns all of it at this point.
I played a little bit of Call for Aid with Aaron
Okay.
earlier this month,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's kind of what this feels like. If you stick a temple, then you play this, and you just kind of provide a ton of stats on the board that turns the game in your favor. It's okay.
Yeah, but what is so the problem? I guess the big problem I have. So Erin is giant, right? Like she is huge amount of stats. And so you do something like Erin Call for Aid. It's not just the free spell, it's a
Well,
giant Erin.
the
That's
Temple Guardians are giant. Also, the one
The
that
main
you
body.
spawn off of the main body is 12 strength.
is it 12? Okay.
And then you spawn 8 strength knights
So
everywhere
so
else that's available, like 12
pretty
plus
darn
8
big.
plus
Okay.
8 plus maybe another 8 if you're
Yeah,
lucky.
Yep.
you get 50 total strength off the entirety of Temple with 3 spawns. That's insane. The obvious downside is they're on your baseline and does nothing to help win you the game. If you can play them literally, if Temple Guardians, if you could play it on any row on the board, would be probably the most broken card in the game. And so I
Yes.
am interested in the ability that you can more easily get it to spawn somewhere on the board.
But only with temples, right? It's not all structures. It's
Correct.
just temples.
Just
Yep.
temples. And that's what we need to petition GPR to change here. Let's make it all structures. I really
Oh
want to put a hearth
no.
down
Good
and then drop
grace.
this
No.
next to it.
That'd be
Oh my god, the
brutal.
hearth?
Oh.
Because you don't have enough value when you get 50 health on the board. I want it 54. Can I get 54? No, I'm thinking with unstable build because it's just so cheap and easy.
Right. Instead
That'd
of
be fair.
unstable hearth guards, you play unstable temple guardians. It's a nice dream, but really, this is all just set up for the Fort Tonic the following turn.
Jeez.
Oh, God. Again.
No,
All right.
but for real, it's. I think it's going to be fine. It's just going to be really hard to pull off. You need to have a really like slow controlling deck. You need to have lots of board clears, and then at that point, kind of anything that's big and beefy is going to win the game for you. This is going
Right,
to just be
exactly.
beefier than most.
Sure, it's a reasonable thing to choose to play at that point. It's just there's lots of things that you could also play at that point.
Yep, that's fair.
All right, well, moving forward from there, this is the one I think, Sabaiku, that everyone is talking about. It's been, gosh, we've been asking for it, or at least hinting about it, or man, I mean, for years at this point, right? That everyone said, this is slightly overstated for its mana cost.
Literally exactly 1 year.
Literally
Yep.
exactly 1 year. So,
Yep.
Sabaiku, what do we got?
Yep. We have Fluffy Bad Boxers finally getting the axe. So the strength will be 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, down from 6, 7, 8, 10, 12. So it'll be as strong at level 5 as it currently is at level 4. Two
You mean it'll
strength.
be heroic soldiers?
It'll be heroic soldiers, still with a bonus,
Sure.
still better than heroic soldiers because you get that confuse ability, which I want to be clear is still useful, but because it confuses all weaker enemy units, like it's going to be really hard to put this into a gifted recruits or sparkly kitty and actually confuse anything at this point.
No, no, no. Look at it from the other side. Boys, it's time to play Rain Bragda.
If they leave frogs out on the board for you and you have Fluffy in the deck, you can still confuse all the frogs. Get those toads out of the way. But after the Bragda, there's nothing that Fluffy's gonna do.
No, Fluffy used to be able to. You could respond, and I know because I used to do this a lot. My opponent would play Rain Bragda, get a whole bunch of 10 strengths. I would play Hags into Fluffy, trade the Hags into something and create a 1-drop, and then just trade the Fluffy into that and watch all these 10 healths crash. And that's no longer an option. This feels like an indirect buff to Shadowfen.
Which is a shame because Shadowfen is already coming out of the woodwork. We talked before earlier in the month about it's weird that nobody's playing Shadowfen. We think it's really good. All of a sudden, in the last week, that's all that I'm seeing. Probably 50 to 60% of my matches on ladder are against Shadowfen opponents. And without Fluffy being a viable counter to these mid-range Shadowfen decks, it's going to be so much worse next season.
Yeah. Thomas, what do you think?
I am so happy for this nerf. Long time coming. This has probably been one of my most hated cards that it was so overpowered in comparison to its counterpart. So this is awesome to see. I'm also extremely excited to see this thing as a reduction to strength for draft bound as well. I can't wait to knock it out of tier 0.
Oh, does it? Oh, this is gonna. So we have to test. Does this knock it for draft mode out of tier 0?
Absolutely.
I think so, yeah.
Okay,
What
so
is
wait, hold on, wait, hear me out. Soul Crushers is a tier 0 card, is it not?
Is it still?
Hey, it was for a while. It might be down to tier 1 at this point.
Okay. What is heroic soldiers in draft? I think it's tier 2.
Tier 2, I think. Yeah, it's just not good.
Yeah, so I think this is going to be tier 1.
Okay, interesting.
It's
It
good, but
might
it's
be
not
right.
insane. It's
No, it
finally
was
the same
so
strength.
insane.
Yeah, it's finally the same strength as everything else. Like as we know in draft bound and equals, like literally having that one extra point of strength to stick on the board is absurd, and this doesn't have that anymore.
That's true, but it still does a lot of extra work, right? Like that's the thing about it. If you level it up, there's always going to be weak things on the board to get good trades into.
And in draft, Fluffy is going to be easier to level for sure.
Right, exactly. But I'm just like, there's one health, one strength units all over the place in draft because you can't afford to upgrade everything. So there's good, easy trades to be had, which you don't necessarily see in ladder. I think in ladder, man, I don't like fluff. So here are the other cards, right? Harvester of Souls provides for you a potentially cheap runner or cheap game breaking card. Loris provides for you oftentimes better guaranteed clears. Soul Crushers can make a trade and be at full health, which Fluffy can't.
Yeah, every single one of those is better than what Fluffy is going to be. The only upside that Fluffy has above those ones is that it's a rare in comparison to the rest being epics and
Sure.
legendaries.
Yep.
Yep.
No, that's fair. Wait. Heroic Soldiers is occasionally dirt cheap.
Yeah, I gotta say, this conversation, to bring it back to ladder, is really just highlighting how bad a lot of these 5 mana cards are, and the reason why we saw no competition at that 5 mana slot really is not because Fluffy was so good. It's because a lot of the other ones are really kind of terrible. Like the strength that you get for 5 mana, the ability that you get for 5 mana, it's got to be really strong because 5 is a relatively large amount to commit to one unit.
It's just really hard. I think Thomas hit it on the nose with rarity. Fluffy's easier to get to level 5 than Loris or
I'm
Harvesters.
not even talking about on draft though, like
No.
on
I'm
ladder.
talking. No, me too. It's hard to find
Well,
epics,
all
dude.
right, that's fair. That's fair.
Well, but okay, so Soul Crushers is going to get like 15 strength. I don't very often run into Soul Crushers on ladder, but every
Hmm.
time an opponent does play it, it's like, oh, that hurt because they are getting really good value out of it.
Right, exactly. Well, that's why it's so good in draft as well, right? Is because uh, you kind of rely on your opponent taking that big, hefty unit that they've soaked a lot of their upgrades into, and you kind of hope that they're trading it into something of yours to whittle it down to a size that whatever you have in hand can handle it.
Hmm.
And Soul Crushers can clear, and they're uninjured, and that's problematic. Now, the reason why they're not as good in draft is because it's really hard to get a level 5 epic.
But going back to ladder, like Eloth makes a trade and remains at full strength. And when was the last time your opponent played Eloth and you're like, oh well, now I'm really scared. I guess I
Eloth is
probably just
nearly
lost the
impossible
game.
to play defensively, though, and that's its
Right.
issue. Not being able to go sideways on your baseline
No,
is hugely relevant.
that's fair.
I think, look, I don't think that all Shadowfen players who've been playing Fluffy should switch to Soul Crushers. That's not what I'm suggesting. I am suggesting, however, that because of the health all being equivalent, to Thomas's point, Soul Crushers a lot of times will clear 5 or 6 health and they're still 10, as opposed to Fluffy, which will now be 5 or 4 health, which is a lot easier to deal with.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I none of this conversation is making me want to replace Fluffy in my deck with another 5 mana card, though.
In
Like
Ooh.
in which deck?
any deck.
Oh,
Okay.
Like, I just want to go cheaper and get something with maybe like good value that costs less, so I can just move through my deck faster. And now, if my opponents aren't running Fluffy as much anymore, I'm not going to be as punished for going wide and potentially getting confused on my units.
So you're saying you want Mistwives?
I think that that's a perfectly reasonable card to play.
I think so as well.
I think that's a nice, solid value for the mana cost.
I kind of want to put Ubis into a lot of my decks instead of Fluffy now, I have to say, because I've always loved Ubis. And I feel like Ubis is just
If you get 2 pings out of Ubis, it's basically the same thing as what you were just saying about Soul Crushers.
right.
but if our theory on Shadowfen coming up with a Resurgent based on this one's drop rate, Ubis wouldn't be a great choice. Like an Ironclad, I'm
No.
probably going to end up bringing in Debug.
Wow. Okay.
Debug's awesome against
It is.
Rain of Frogs.
Yep.
And then, of course, in Swarm, it's still just the best 5-drop being Dark Harvest. Never, no change.
All right. Here's my call. This inadvertently creates a nerf to Bragda. Maybe not in March, but within 2 or 3 months, Bragda gets nerfed after this.
Agreed.
Bragda's got to get toned down.
That's a reasonable consequence. In the short term, at least, I think hopefully we'll see some more variety in deck building, and
Yes.
you won't just always see Fluffy in your opponent's deck. That'll be a nice bonus for the short term, at
For
least.
sure. For sure. But now there's no 5-drop that clears a Bragda kind of turn. Like there's like everything, all the other 5-drops just at best even trade into one of the rains, which sucks.
Yep.
let's move on from
All right.
there.
Actually, well, so before moving on, I don't know how much you guys have really paid attention to the Discord. So, when I had seen this nerf to Fluffy, I made a small comment in the Discord about how I really wish that they'd also buffed heroic soldiers at the same time to like 12 strength, because even right now, Fluffy is still overall just simply a better heroic soldiers. So yeah, I was just like, well, it would have been nice that if they would have also buffed up the raw stats on heroic. And I don't like to get into theory crafting at all, or
Okay.
anything like that. But Berzosa had said something to the effect of they've got other potential plans for vanillas that they're running through the dev team, and if it doesn't work out, then maybe they would buff heroic. But instead, they've got other stuff that they're theory crafting,
Oh.
something like the first one that he just shot off the hip was a essentially like a potion of growth for vanilla cards.
Ooh,
Well, that's cute.
Yeah.
I like that.
And it buffed like all vanilla cards of yours on the board, so your lawless, your heroic soldiers, gifted recruits, veterans of war. Like it only targeted those things, but all of them on the board.
So, Baiku, there was a in Hearthstone shaman legendary that gave all units in your deck +1/+1. Do you recall this?
Yes. It's like a 6 mana card.
Mist
Yeah,
caller.
something like that.
What if we get a new soldier legendary that just buffs all soldiers everywhere, hand, deck, and on the board by one?
I think that I would put Snake Eyes in that deck.
Oh, good gracious, that's a great idea. Ooh.
Uh, no, yeah, there's definitely yeah, we've talked about this in the past, and it's common knowledge. Like a lot of these vanilla knights, especially heroic soldiers, warfront runners, like there's better versions of those cards out there. So why would you play the common versions? And I do hope that they manage to find something that works and gives players an incentive, because like we just said, it's all about variety. Makes the game more interesting when you don't know what to expect from your opponent.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and the good news is like I'm seeing recruits less, which I like. I like that I'm seeing recruits less. But currently I'm seeing recruits less and just kitties basically the same amount as I used to see recruits. So we've got to find some way of bringing the knights back up a little bit. And I'm glad to hear Berjosa hinted a while ago that they wanted to do something with knights to give them some extra special oomph. It's good to hear that that hasn't fallen off, and hopefully we see something soon.
Hmm.
Moving on from that one, I know that's the big one, and that's the one that everybody's going to talk about. And so, you guys now, everyone knows how the Brewed Sages feel about it, which is fantastic. We've been waiting for it. We're happy to hear it happened. Uh, Excited Mousers. This is one that maybe we haven't been clamoring for. Let's see who's taking this one. Is this Thomas? Thomas, are you taking Excited Mousers?
And I'll take that one. Yeah, sure.
All right.
So it gets just a strength buff right across the board, going now to 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 strength. So it now gets the same strength that Fluffy had for the 5 mana
Hmm.
slot. So this is now the new. I think this is the strongest. Oh no, that's right. There's Flameless Lizard that has the
Correct.
15 strength at 5 mana. But I do like the idea behind Excited. I've tried to play it. I haven't had much of any success with it because it doesn't have any movement. But 12 strength body is
It's
always nice to
decent.
see. Yeah.
Yeah, so 12 strength, no movement, on play, confuse the same number of surrounding enemies as there are friendly units on the board. So you do have to have some board presence to make this work in the first place. This can't just be something you jam down on the board on 5 mana,
It's true, but
unless you don't want to get any value out of it.
if your opponent just played Rain Bragda, could you respond with Rain Excited Mouse
Yes.
and
Interesting.
just sort of watch it all burn down?
As long as you had front.
Oh my gosh, what a turn that must be!
Yeah, it's a really cute effect. And it used to cost 3 mana for a little while there.
Yep.
They kind of played around with the mana cost and strength on this card quite a bit. At 3 mana, I think that it would actually be really, really good in a heavy Bragda meta. At 5 mana, I just can't get myself excited to spend that much paying for it.
I mean, so back to your point about 5 mana cards, right? Like the reason why we're playing Fluffy or sometimes Ubis or out of necessity Loris is that we are looking for something that either responds to our opponent's attempt at turning the game around. So, like a Zuri turn, we need Loris. Or we're looking for a card that turns the game around for us, right? So either we want to respond to our opponent trying to take over the game, or we want to take over the game. Excited Mousers doesn't do either of those things particularly well.
No, like it's a really good stall mechanism. If you're attacking
Mhm.
your opponent at their baseline and they try to outrush you and put a bunch of stuff on your baseline instead, great. I can just put I can just put excited mouse hairs down there and it'll confuse everything at the baseline. And, now I basically won this game, kind of. Like,
Isn't
I had to spend,
Slyboots just more than adequate and it has movement
it
to do
has
that
movement
kind of
so
thing
you can
though?
use it flexibly to attack also if you need to, as opposed to
Right.
this.
When I think of, or when I see cards that have text like this, by the way, thank you for reading it off for me. I'm sure there's still plenty of people that don't remember what the text says.
Yeah, I thought
um,
this was the 5/3 card, right? 3 movement, 5 health. No,
oh
no,
no, I don't even remember the name of that one. No
that's
offense,
Rapid
me.
Mousers, the other
There you
Mouser.
go. Um, so with a lot of these confused type of mechanics, it's essentially freezing all your opponent's stuff because I mean they're just not going to get to advance their front line for one more turn, and so that's another way to think about this, where it gives you another turn to come up with your Hunter's Vengeance or whatever other control deck tool you're using. That's about the only situation for this card.
Flaming Stream. You're just looking for Flaming
No,
Yes.
Stream.
but you're right. That's a really good way to look at it. Like, this is essentially Moment's Peace at that point.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yes,
It's a chunk of stats, and it delays everything by a turn.
potentially. So the problem is, so freeze, you know where all those units are going to be. With confusion, yeah, the front isn't moving, and yes, they're not going to go into your base, but they very easily could open up a column for runners.
In general, though, you're going to get more value than you would with Freeze, and so I still think this is a slightly more upgraded version of Freeze
Right,
in general.
because I agree. It's unpredictable movement, but oftentimes you will end up clearing out some of your opponent's strength on the board.
Yep.
No, that's fair. That's
But
fair.
yeah, overall, it's still just too expensive to be able to see play because this is the second lowest mana cost thing that actually guaranteed confuses your opponent's stuff that is going to stay confused for a card like Melodious Sisters to be able to utilize. I love um, Sly Boots, but the fact that it forces your opponent's thing to move on play and also remove the confusion status means that you can't also Melodious Sisters whatever Sly Boots confused.
Oh my gosh.
I've tried it and kind of sucks.
Fellas, I got it. You sweet cap Frost Hexers on one turn and let your opponents flood their units around that confused frozen unit so that the following turn you can Melodious Sisters.
You joke, but I have done that freeze and confused in the
That would be
Frostling Brawl.
awesome.
They play Dawn Sparks at their baseline, and I
Mhm,
don't
mhm.
have Sweet Cap and Hair Raising, but I've got Sweet Cap in a freeze. You freeze it, it stays confused. You find the Hair Raising next turn, and then you just end the game that way.
That's brutal. Oh,
You
that's
guys
so
are
good.
creating the most annoying confusion winter deck
Yes.
stall deck of
Yes.
existence.
Right? It's all just freeze and confuse, and eventually the Melodious Sisters will work.
Oh my gosh.
We'll find the value.
Oh.
Slot some Broken Earth Drakes in there. We got this. This could work.
Oh,
Well,
Rob.
so I have to tell you, I've been playing this Giovanna Rush deck, and I've been running into a problem where I'm putting so much value on the board because I'm running like Ubis and some other big hitters, Mistwives. My opponents they're trading into my big boys and losing those trades because I got such a tactical advantage, a value advantage from the first time I play Jev. The rest of the game, I never have anything to icicle Jev. On my turn, there's no units of theirs left on the board. So like something that's got a little bit more just I can drop raw stats on the board kind of deck that plays in that same sort of vein of freeze and confuse might be really good. Like
Right.
this is a big boy, right? It's 12 health.
Yeah, but how many times are you really excited to play Flameless? Like a big pile of stats just doesn't do it. And if the confusion payoff isn't there, if
Yeah.
Melodious doesn't do enough, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think we need somebody to go back to the drawing board for Winter Felines, and we'll see if we can get this to work.
Maybe just give excited Mousers just one movement.
Oh, yes.
So don't worry, everyone.
12
We got
strength,
rid
one
of Fluffy.
movement.
We nerfed Fluffy down to 10 health. You're welcome. Also, hey, check out Excited Mousers.
Oh man.
Problem solved. All right, so moving on from there, Sabaiku. Sheepyard is going back and adjusting Rogue Sheep again. What's going on?
Giving it a little strength boost. It was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and now it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. So up a pretty significant amount of strength at level 5. This notably takes it out of unhealthy hysteria range, which is kind of terrible because I just won 2 games in the past week, weirdly, with hysteria on Rogue Sheep. But it still has the same effect of drawing cards for you. It's now just a big pile of stats. If you get the mana discount on the cards, even on 2 cards, then it's essentially a 2 mana 9 strength, which we all play unstable build when we play Ironclad for a reason. 2 mana 9 strength is real good. So it could definitely see a resurgence there, but probably not. I don't think that the raw strength alone is enough to make it playable.
I actually think the other way on this one. I've played around with Rogue Sheep, and I think it's perfectly good. I wouldn't say it's OP, but I think it's very good. I think for whatever reason, the play rate is below what it should be for the card. Although, again, I don't think this is an auto include in every deck. This is not, fluffy. But it's a very good card that more people should be playing in decks than they are. And this buff feels to me like one of those, Berjosa says every once in a while they nerf something even though it doesn't need a nerf just because it's being overplayed and they just want to get the play rate to drop a little bit. So they nerf it very slightly. It doesn't really change its power, but it changes people's perception. This feels to me like the opposite. They're giving it a buff, I think, because people just aren't playing it as much as they should.
Yeah. All right. So 2 arguments against that. Number
Okay.
one, we talked about predictability and reliability being important. And Rogue Sheep is neither of those things, right? You never know what you're going to get from your opponent, and you never know if it's going to advance your game plan or be something that you want to just cycle into your deck every time you see it because you never want to play it.
Fair.
Number 2, I would like to point out there's a fundamental design problem with Rogue Sheep, right? In order to play Rogue Sheep and draw cards, you need to empty your hand first, which means you need to either have a deck full of cheap cards or a deck designed to go into the late game, or both. And a deck full of cheap cards that's designed to go late
doesn't exist.
So you want to empty your hand in order to refill it with cards that have a mana discount so you can then continue to play them and overwhelm your opponent. But everything you're playing is just kind of like easily cleared by Hunter's Vengeance, and then you're right back to where you started.
There's this guy. His name is Brian Kibler. Are both of you familiar with him? He was a
Yep.
Magic the Gathering legend and then became a Hearthstone legend. He played for a while this remarkable deck in Hearthstone that used I'm not going to remember the name of the legendary, but it was an Inspire legendary. So every time you used your hero power, it generated a random card for you. and he could win. I would watch streams for hours on end where he could just get the most random spells freely given to him by this legendary, and he just sit there for a second, realize what value he could derive from it. I tried playing the deck, and let me tell you how badly I crashed and burned. I couldn't do it. Just the point I'm trying to make is there is an inherent value to that mana discount that if you have the skill to apply to it is phenomenally good.
Yeah, so
And it's possible I just don't have that skill.
well, I think you're exactly right on the same or on the correct vein for that. A lot of the cards in this game, once you just get a feel for them, you just can kind of autoplay them. Rogue
Hmm.
Sheep is like probably, in my opinion, one of the only like really high skill level cards to play in this game because you are being forced to play with randomness each time you play it, and you have to be able to adapt on the fly. You have to have essentially, well, not 200 cards memorized because only a quarter of them are tier level cards that your opponents are going to have in their deck, but you still have to have a very large chunk of the collection like memorized to be able to quickly decide what you're going to do on your turn and make the most optimal play. So very high skill level. I'm happy to see the buff on this thing. 7 strength definitely didn't feel enough. It felt terrible when you couldn't do at least a clean trade with siege breakers or scrap planners or any of the other million 4 mana 8 strength cards. So
Good point.
I think going up to 8 strength would have been sufficient. I'm not
Hmm.
100%
Hmm.
sure why they jumped it up to 9, but now this thing even stays on board after one of those trades, which can make a big difference. I mean, we just saw that with Fluffy, so that'll help out. I'm excited for it. I'm definitely going to play with it.
This one goes up to 11.
Wait,
See?
what?
What? Oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. You don't get the reference?
It sounds familiar, but I'm not sure.
Oh my gosh. I feel so old right now. All right, well, never mind on that. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole.
Okay. Yeah,
But seriously,
I will
Google that
definitely be playing
afterwards.
around with it.
Yeah.
I think it is a fun card. I don't think that this is going to make it significantly more competitive, but I would love to be proven wrong because it is very enjoyable to play Rogue Sheep decks.
Yeah, my anticipation to this is, or my read into this is, it's just designed to bring the play rate up to where it should be. And if it goes over, maybe they bring it down to an 8 strength to bring it back down. But I think right now they're just trying to juice the play rates a bit. And I think they should, because I think Rogue Sheep is actually a very good 4-drop. The one problem with it, I will point out, is you gotta survive. Edric was the most common 4-drop legendary, right, in the game, because it helped you survive. It helped you win trades and take advantage of situations where you had, up to that point, been getting overwhelmed on board. Rogue Sheep doesn't do that. You need to find something super helpful sometimes when you're behind, and Rogue Sheep can't always do that. So that's my big concern with it, is just um, you oftentimes need to kind of already be ahead to be able to afford to play it, and that's not always so easy.
Yeah, that's fair.
Last thing I want to do is play this on like 5 mana and then have my opponent drop a bucks in front of it. Like, no.
Nerf.
Speaking of things that need to be nerfed, all right. So Sabaiku, give me this. There's the new card that's already getting a little adjustment. Function Wilds. Wilds.
Function Wild, just a few months old, yes, but now it's getting a little strength buff. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for 3 mana, which was terrible, and nobody played it. And now it will be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so +1 at every level. Speaking about power creep earlier, this is now just West Wind Soldiers plus. You know, it does a vitalize effect for everyone who has never played it, which is probably most people. On play, it'll vitalize itself and 1 or 2 surrounding friendly units. So sometimes you get West Wind, sometimes you get West Wind plus 1 or 2 strength, maybe down the road.
For those of you who don't know, the reason why we keep comparing it to Westwind is because it is a 3 mana card with 1 movement.
And
And
6 strength.
and now 6 strength, right?
Yep.
So Baiku's right on. It is just a vitalized West Wind that can sometimes vitalize adjacent units, which I don't feels pretty good to me. I don't know. I'd play this.
When was the last time you played Westwind?
Well, so see, here's the thing. There's a lot of good 3 drops inside the factions that I would choose to play over Westwind. Do I play this over linked golems?
Or over Green Gale? Or over Upgrade Point?
I will play this over linked. I will also have Green Gale in the deck. The reason I say that I'm actually going to play this in Ironclad is because take a look at how much we play Heliotroopers in Shadowfen,
Oh yeah. Oh
which
yeah.
is essentially Westwind Sailors.
No, it's
Ooh,
7. No, it's 7. That's a
7 is more than
big
6.
difference. 7 is more than 6. That's right. Good job, Sabaiku. I'm so
I did
proud of
it.
you.
No, the difference is if you open the game with Heliotroopers, yes, it's basically Westwind by the time it attacks into an enemy, and this will be bigger. But using it to make a trade, it's worse. Or if your
Mhm.
opponent is able to make a trade in response, it's worse.
I
Like
have
if I
not
have
played Heliotroopers for a full trade off the Heliotroopers very often. It's generally into a 6 strength being dubious or destructo or
Mhm.
kitty or a 5 strength. And then I'm generally left with 1 left over.
Wow.
no,
Okay, so
that's
that's not how I play Heliotroopers at all.
No, that's understandable. Like a lot of times you don't get to dictate what your opponent plays on the board and you just make the trade that you can.
I'm
But
sorry, why are we trading?
you make the
I have
trade
Helios in my deck. I put Helios on the baseline.
At that point, then it's a west wind. Yeah,
No, it's not. My
isn't it?
opponent cannot clear my front with a 6 health.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
That is a huge
and
difference.
function you can clear. And that's what I was gonna trying to
Mhm.
get to. There's a lot of 2 mana cards that do 6 damage at this point. And it if it survives for a turn, yeah, that's great. But does that 1 extra strength do enough?
I kind of feel like so the vitalizing 2 surrounding friendly units feels relevant in this conversation. It is flat out better than Westwind. It is Westwind with a benefit, but
Yeah.
that benefit being on 2 other units. Look, not for nothing,
And
6
itself.
health.
And itself
Right,
too.
exactly right.
Yeah.
6 health on its own is not the easiest thing in the world to get rid of. 5 health is. 6 health requires not all of your cards, right? There's specific cards you now need. If on top of that we've now vitalized 2 other units that also therefore demand trades before you start getting good value, this is good. This is just flat out good.
All right, wait. So you would play this on say on 6 mana, this and GP Destructobots?
I might do it in a different order, but yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to put all 3 of them on my opponent's baseline, yes.
So and that's where you have the advantage over linked, right? Like you can actually put this on the baseline instead of linked, although then it's still everything is at 6 health or less.
Here's the play. You put Destructo in C4, Green Protos in A4, pardon me, C3 moving to C4. You put Green Protos in A4 moving to A5, and then you put Function Wilds in B4 moving to B5. So your Destructo are protecting, your Function Wilds are on the baseline, as are your
Link Golems is just 100% better in that scenario.
Yeah, in that scenario, what I would have done would
why
have been
why was
Destructo.
it better?
Look, because you can then buff up the Destructo for better protection, and you also have a higher strength linked on the
Oh wait,
baseline.
yeah, no, never mind. Yeah, sorry.
But
Put Destructo on the baseline as
it
well.
doesn't,
All
if
3
Yes,
of
you
them.
have
Yeah,
exactly.
if you have unrestricted access to your opponent's baseline such that you can put 3 units on it, it doesn't matter what those 3 units are, and it doesn't matter if one of them vitalizes anything.
Well, yeah,
True.
but in the situation where you can do all 3, Link Golems kind of sucks because it's not going to actually buff anything. It's just going to be a 3 drop, 3 health on their base, which stinks.
Or you buff up, like you said, you play off of the baseline and buff it up, and
Yeah.
you get more total stats, but less on the less directly pressuring the base.
I have run into serious problems where like I draw dead early and I need to play defense, and Linked Golems is the card I've got to try to open with on 5 mana. And it's just like, it's so bad. I don't
If
have
you're
anything to buff. It's just weak.
if you're playing this, like if your 4 mana play to start off the game is green prototypes and either Function Wilds or Linked Golems, which one do you want,
Link Golems.
Thomas?
Well, obviously linked golems, but obviously the combo doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah. Wait. I want to ask Sabaiku one. If your opening on 3 mana is Shady Ghoul or Westwind, which one do you want?
Shady.
Okay, great. Which card do you never want to see again the entire game?
Shady.
Exactly.
But Link Golems isn't quite that bad.
No, it's true.
Link
It's
Golems is
true.
not something you never want to see again. It's still very strong as the game goes on. This gets weaker and weaker as the game goes on because your opponent has more and more opportunity to respond, and you just never get any benefit out of the Vitalize.
Maybe I don't get benefit out of the Vitalize, but it's still just a 3. It's still just a Westwind, which is not a bad card.
Yeah, and that's what it.
What
That's
is
what
what
I
I
was just
wanted to
about to
ask?
say. Like, it's fine. It's going to be an average card. I'm not saying it's bad by any stretch, but I don't know that this all this buff does is bring it up from bad to average.
But okay, what is the best 3-drop to start off the game with, excluding Murs because you're building your own specific deck? Under current state, like today on the 27th, I would say that it's Lost Psyches.
Yep.
And then
Yes.
I would say Function Wilds is in second place because you're almost guaranteed that it's, yeah, your opponent on their 4 mana turn, can they clear this? Yes, they could run
No.
with a Saber Paws and
hmm
a Destructive Bots. That's the only way that they can clear this is with a Saber Paws and one of the
Yeah.
3 2 strength
No.
or 6
Green
strength.
Protos into Green Gale.
Ah, yeah, Green Kill does it too. Okay, so there are a couple of unique scenarios where they can clear it. Otherwise, this is going to get the buff. And
Yeah, I agree. It's at the start of the game on 3 mana. It's going to be one of the better options in your deck.
one of the best
Yes.
options in the game.
And then you're never going to want to use it again.
No, that's not true. No, that's not true. So
You'll
here's the
use
thing
it
about
because you have to.
No. I play Lost Psyches now instead of Heliotroopers in several of my Shadowfen decks. I think Lost Psyches is better than Heliotroopers. It's better to open with for sure. And then as the game moves on, it's not quite as good as Heliotroopers when I need to make trades in the mid game, but it's close enough to as good that I don't care.
hmm
I'm going to say that Function Wilds is better than Lost Psyches to open because I can control exactly where it is and it's going to buff itself. That's fantastic. And then after that, because I can control the trades with this better than Lost Psyches, it's actually a card I want more.
hmm And what I don't like about Linked Golems is all that conditional placement as well as the requiring of the combo with other constructs. And as the game goes on, it really doesn't feel good, like on your 9-10 mana turn, to keep green prototypes in hand for your combo with Linked Golems, when in reality you just wanted to throw the green prototypes away because it's effectively 0 strength on the board.
I agree. The more I'm thinking about this, the more I think it does, in fact, replace Linked Golems. You don't have to wait for the combo unless you're going very construct heavy, right? If you're going
Yes.
very construct heavy,
Then
maybe
you
you
run
play
both.
both and you don't play Green Gale.
Or that 4 mana one, the Finite Loopers.
Oh, good. If you're, please take that out of your deck now.
Yeah.
If you're playing Finite Loopers, just stop. It's don't.
Finite
Just
Loopers is disappointing.
It is,
Well,
sadly.
that's a topic for another day, though. We've already been talking for a long time.
This is true.
all right. So we will move on from there. And that's going to be it for the balance changes. A reminder, there is one nerf that's Fluffy. So if you don't have Fluffy to 5, or as you know, as maxed out as you can make it right now, you get more compensation the higher the level. So get on it. And then from there, everything else is a buff, so you won't get anything in return for it. We have to move on from there because we have some new cards to talk about that we're going to see for the first time ever in March. Tomas.
First one.
Wait, I want to say the name. I'm sorry, I have to because I was a huge Yosemite Sam fan as a child. And so the absorbent varmints. Please tell me about absorbent varmints.
Oh, geez. So we've got the Ironclad Rodent Ancient, 4 mana, and he's going to go from 3, 4, 5, 6 to 7 strength at level 5. The ability is before moving, make all friendly ancients on the board pull enemy units from behind, and then deal 3 damage to all pulled units. So I think overall he's mostly just going to get 10 total strength value for each time you play it. The thing that I really like about this thing is if your opponent decides that they want to go aggro and ignore this thing and the unit behind, the varmints can just continually pull whatever's behind it across the entire board. I know that's never going to happen, but it just is hilarious in my
It's
mind to
is
say
hilarious.
that.
absolutely hilarious to think about that happening. I base lock you. No, I base lock you. No, I base what?
So fun card, unique one. It's probably gonna see some play, not a whole lot, a little bit. What are your guys' thoughts?
I think more than a little bit.
It has movement, so it works right away.
It works with itself. It'll pull anything behind it. It's easy to pair with something like Erratic Neglects, so you can get maybe a twofer as soon as you play it on 5 mana. It's not something you want to play early, obviously, because there's not going to be any opposing units behind you at that point. Like you said, when you're pushing and you want to just turn the tables and attack and ignore your opponent's aggression, this lets you do that in the same way that Frost Hexers and an aggressive winter deck will let you do that.
So many decks are now running Lost Psyches as an opening 3-drop anyway. So mid to late game, 7, 8, 9 mana, I could see just playing Lost Psyches, seeing whichever column it decides to put itself on the baseline. Great. I'll put absorbing varmints to the side of it, whichever side is more advantageous to pull more stuff off my baseline. This just feels good. It's not great, but it's good.
Yeah, that's true. For some reason, I was thinking it was whenever one of your ancients moved, they did that. It's whenever he moved, all of your ancients get that trigger. Okay.
Yes.
Yep. So,
Cool.
damage wise, 3 damage is not a ton. If you actually get 2 triggers off of it, you'll probably clear whatever was behind it. But what has me concerned about this card is the max of 7 strength on a 4 mana card.
Mhm.
Like that's relatively easy for your opponent to clear. And that's
Heliotroopers will do it. You know it won't though. That
Function
crappy
Wilds
function
will
ones.
There we go.
No, I like this card. I think this is
like it.
good.
I think it's good. I think it'll see a lot of play. It really just comes down to how creatively you can use it. I like I said, my only real concern with it is the strength.
I don't think it'll see play because I still see Windmakers being the right card in this slot generally.
The one downside to Windmakers is that you have to play it defensively.
Exactly.
Whereas this puts 7 on their baseline.
While playing defense, right? Offense and defense at the same time.
Well, it's weird because I guess now that you say that, this is like opposite decks. So most Ironclad decks are just mid-rangey, rushy, aggressive deck, and Windmakers is your one tempo card. And this is kind of the opposite, where you could actually use this a little bit more for the aggression. So, I guess maybe it fits in the same deck even. You just get to be a little bit more aggressive with this.
Yeah, I think the mistake for this one is I would not overwhelm your deck with Ancients. Like, being able to pull 2 units is already fantastic. I think being able to pull 1 unit, I don't know that I would intentionally add any additional Ancients than you already wanted to play just to use Absorbing Varmints. I think Lost Psyches should probably be in the deck anyway. So you have 2. That's enough.
Yeah. So the number one reason I'm still skeptical of this, though, is because this is Baby Boomstick.
Sort of. No. But here's the thing: Boomstick is not bad. Boomstick is just way
it's
too.
Not?
No, it's just way too expensive for what it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like the effect is good.
Well, yeah, but wait, Boomstick doesn't pull stuff. Like
It doesn't need
like
to when it does 8 damage.
yes, it. Okay, my opponent drops a siren on their baseline. I just stick this on their baseline and be like, "What's going on?" I don't boomstick a siren or not a siren. Sorry, lady rhyme. I get the two of them confused because they're both played by Winter. That only ever plays Legends and Gift of the Wise. But like pulling units back is a big deal. The problem is with pulling, you have to have front, and that's not always necessarily a given.
Well, in the situation you described, your opponent is a Winter player. They're going ham and just saying, "Look, I'm going to put a huge rhyme on your baseline because I assume that you can't kill me here."
Yes.
Yeah, this buys you extra time.
To be clear, this is the card you play for all of you out there who think they need to play Confinement to not lose to Lady Rhyme decks. This is the card you add to your Ironclad versions of your decks instead.
I like that.
Yeah, I used to win almost all of my Reckless Rush mirrors back when Hysteria was 2 mana because I would not try to trade and I would let my opponent go to my baseline, and then on 6 mana I would Hysteria one of his units into the other and play Devastators on my baseline, on their baseline kind of a thing. And that was it. Like I just needed to keep enough damage off my base so that I had one more turn. So in an Icy Rush versus Icy Rush battle, this feels like the winning card.
Yeah.
Or you could put Flooding the Gates. I mean, whichever one is more your style.
I guess I'm a little bit more convinced now. I think you guys have swayed me enough to actually give this a better shake at it.
Yeah, this is good. I mean, again, it's not great. It's good, but it's good.
Yep. I think it'd be solid. A solid A or B tier card in your deck. You're never going to be unhappy when you play it.
No,
You're not
exactly
playing
right.
it in every situation, but
no.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, Thomas, you can have Plague Monarchs.
Alrighty, so we finally have the Shadowfen one, 5 mana, and the main body strength is 3, 3, 4, 4, 5 at level 5. Before moving, make all friendly ancients on the board drain 3 strength from a surrounding enemy poisoned unit. This one I think has the most potential. You have to completely build a deck around this one, unlike the other ones that we've been talking. I guess Oregon originally also required a deck build around, but this guy, you have to build a shot or a poison deck and also have a lot of the ancients as well in the deck. But if you do, my god, you are getting a complete board wipe on your opponent. You're turning all of your ancients into witches of the wild.
Yeah, but man. So you need Venom Falls Spire to make this work.
Yes, this is
Yeah.
a Venomfall deck for
So
sure.
I've been messing around with Copperskin and Mark Spray a little bit recently, and like the number of times that Copperskin poisoned a bunch of units when I play it, and then the next turn there's nothing left on the board to marked. Like this is going to end up being the same way. You just need the Venomfall, unfortunately. Otherwise, it's just never going to happen.
Yeah, and that's the problem with it is because it needs specifically a structure to work. It never can become a meta card because if this ever started to dominate, people just start adding in execution and then the game's over. Without the Venom Fall out, this is just too difficult, right?
Well, at the bare minimum, it makes you play an extra 2 mana with the Copperskin on the same turn as the Plague Monarchs, right?
Well, but if you put your mana into so like my opponent opens with a couple of cards, whatever, I put my mana into a Venom Fall. They put their mana into removing my Venom Fall. There's still multiple unpoisoned units on the board. I don't like at some point I have to figure out how to turn the tide to not only poison their units, but then somehow miraculously spread a bunch of ancients around the board such that they are all capable of draining from my opponent's units that I never bothered to deal with in the first place because I was too busy putting a Venom Fall on the board.
Fragmented Essences does a great job of splitting and making sure that there's a bunch of stuff on the board.
It's true. No, it does. It's a very good and the 4-drop as well does a pretty good job at this sort of thing. I just like But if you're playing those cards, you can't afford Venom Fall. So then how are you ever poisoning anything?
Well, so some of the poison decks that have been doing pretty good up in Heroes League have been like these super controlling packages that are all the poison cards, and then the convert package as well, the three convert cards. I can't think of their names off the top of my head,
Blood
but
Ministers, Clerics, and Curse of Strings.
yes, thank you. But yeah,
You're
instead
welcome.
of like those three cards, you do Plague Monarchs and Fragmented, and then you've got one extra card to add to your deck for whatever situation you're running into.
Your better bet is to play the convert cards. Like that's
um,
the problem.
it feels really really difficult to set up.
It
I
is.
don't deny, Thomas, I think you're right. Like the power level is there if you can get it to work. Like especially like even just one poisoned unit with a fragmented that split up and is on either side of it. Like you take 6 away from it, you gain 6 on each 3 on each fragmented. That that feels pretty good.
Well, so like let's think about it this way. Let's say I throw a copper skin into oh sorry, not a copper skin. Am I drawing a blank here? Give me the 3 mana, 2 movement
Lime limbs?
toad. Nope, 3 mana, 2 movement toad, 1 health,
Oh,
poisons.
Crimson Sentry.
Crimson Sentry. Thank you. So I throw Crimson Sentry forward. This gives me front and it crashes into some stuff to hopefully poison all of it. And then I can stick my, little, I don't know, erratic neglects right where the Crimson exploded. And then I play Plague Mark. So this is like a 9 mana combo, 3 cards. And the odds of any of those units surviving to be drained is pretty low. Like at the end of the day, my erratic neglects, instead of being 5, is maybe, I don't know, 8,
Well,
7.
so ideally, I think you have either A, stuck a Venom Fall Spire on the board so that as they play stuff, it gets poisoned, and then you can respond with the Plague Monarchs, which itself does have movement, so you get the trigger on the same turn. And also,
Sure.
it is itself a friendly ancient, so it will drain itself also.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Yep.
or you have poisoned stuff the previous turn with Copper Skin and let it survive such that now you can play Plague Monarchs and finish it off. The problem is if you're leaving your opponent's unit on the board, even poisoned, you're allowing
You're
them to
giving them
maintain
front.
front and you're allowing them to
Yeah.
pressure you. And in return, you're draining units that were not actually, that are now not actually the problem. They're not the ones causing the pressure.
Correct. That's kind of where I'm at with this. Is just like, if this was like a 3 or 4 mana card, maybe you could use it, but
I
at
think this would be
5 mana.
way too good at that mana cost.
At four
So
mana, yeah. Like,
the way
isn't
of
that crazy? The difference between 4 and 5. I think it would be ridiculous at 4 mana. I think I would play it all the time.
at 4 mana, it'd just be witches.
No, no, because again, witches can always be used. It will drain off your own units, which is fantastic a lot of times because it still leaves a unit that your opponent needs to clear before they can attack the witches on their baseline, right? So in a situation where your opponent's like had to trade left or right on their baseline, I'm going to stick a unit to the side of it. I'm going to witches. I'm going to get a double witches. I'm going to clear your unit, and I'm going to leave like 2 health behind, protecting my witches. Is that easy for you to clear? Yes, but you still need to spend a mana and a card before you can even start to try to chip away at my witches. That's fantastic. This, like, the poison requirement is so difficult. Having tried to make Marked as Prey work, it can work. But boy, the ratio of poisoning usefully to synergizing with poisoned units is not quite balanced. It is much more. It is more. How do I want to say this? Toxic Sack and Crimson Sentry blow up units, and there's nothing left behind. So you try to use them to poison units, and it doesn't work out because it ends up just clearing them. So you're reliant entirely on Venom Fall and Copperskin. And gosh, it is really hard to keep those two paired up with your Amber Hides and your Marked as Prey. So if on top of that I've got to try to keep them in cycle with this, gosh, I don't
This
know,
thing
man.
Well, so to your point, the Crimson and Toxic are destroying the strength from your opponent's stuff, and so Amber Hides generally has a hard time getting the total value, that 8 strength drained from the opponent's thing. This thing being only 3, obviously on its face is worse, but you're probably actually only getting about that much strength
No, no,
drain.
no. I struggle to find a marked as prey thing. Like I will throw a crimson forward, and everything that gets poisoned is dead. On my next turn, there is nothing to marked.
Yep,
Nothing.
it for sure has to go into a Venomfall deck, but like I said, there's been a very good Hunter League ranked one floating around out there, and Amber Hides is more targeted to the go tall decks. Plague Monarchs is geared towards the go wide decks.
Sure, but I was already running Blood Ministers in that deck anyway, and that feels better.
Does it? No, no, it doesn't.
No?
I don't think so. Because one, this is 1 mana cost cheaper. Number two, it's got movement. And number three, you don't have the board positional requirements that Blood Ministers would have. This could be on the left hand side, your Fragmented or your Lost Psyches could be over on the right hand side, or your Historic Protectors, whatever else you've
Okay.
decided to throw in.
It is surrounding, not bordering. This is true.
I think it's got potential.
It's got potential. I agree with that. It's going to be very, very difficult to play it well, I suspect.
Yes. To be clear, I've never been good at playing the Shadowfen decks, but the players that are very good with them, kind of similar to how Pineapple is an amazing winter player that destroys me every single time, and even when I copy their deck, I cannot play it and I will
It
lose.
doesn't work.
The same thing is true for these Shadowfen poison decks. I can't play them very well, but when I get paired against them, I get annihilated.
Well, if any of you are hoping to be able to hone your skills with these 2 new cards, the good news is there will be brawls that give you 0 mana level 1 copies of each of these cards that you can test out. So you'll be able to play brawls with 13 cards, weirdly, on those weeks. The Warrior Brawl on March 10th will have Absorbing Varmints. And then the Warrior Brawl on March 24th will have Plague Monarchs. So you can test it out. If you happen to get lucky and find an additional copy of either of those, I believe it's staying the same as it has been, where you can have 2 copies of 0 mana cards in your deck, which is pretty dang sweet. We also have a couple of quality of life improvements. The notifications toggle between busy and online to disable or enable incoming requests will be added. And another small but highly requested feature, multi-buy, so that you can buy several books at once. Hot diggity damn! Sabaigu, this one's exciting.
Yes, this will save my thumbs so much tapping.
Wait, you use your thumbs to buy?
I only play on my phone.
I only play on my phone as well. But the whole reason why I had level 5 Needle Blast is because of thumb instead of forefinger. So I only use my forefinger now. All right, well, that's going to end the main portion of this episode, which means it's time for me to remind you to please contact us, preferably in our channel on Stormbound. Pardon me, in our channel on the Stormbound Discord server, or on Twitter at Brewed Sages. You can always email us at thebrewedsages@gmail.com. We did not hear from anyone this week. We did get a request, and I just want to give a quick shout out to Maxwell. Yes, we will be doing your deck detective on your deck very soon. This one, because of the way patch notes work out, it's always a long episode. We just could not afford to do it. But don't worry, my friend. We will check that deck out as soon as we can, and we will give you all of our thoughts on it. So look for that very soon. That's going to do it for this episode. For Sabaiku and Thomas, I am Freeloader. We are the Brewed Sages, reminding you to stay hydrated.